Ladies and gentlemen, you thought you had it all figured out. The plans were solid, the goals were set, and everything seemed like it was finally coming together. You had the job, the relationship, the blueprint for your future. But then everything changed. And maybe at first it felt like a breakdown. But what if I told you it was a breakthrough? What if the thing that looked like an ending was actually a setup for a brand new beginning? See, God doesn't always announce his plans with a trumpet. Sometimes he whispers change in the middle of chaos. Sometimes he lets everything fall apart so he can show you what he was building underneath all along. Because when God changes everything, it doesn't always look like a miracle at first. It might look like pain. It might feel like confusion. It might even come dressed as disappointment. But make no mistake, he's doing something in the shift. You were comfortable. You were confident. You were cruising on what you thought was stability. But comfort is not the goal. Calling is. And sometimes God has to shake what you thought was secure to reveal what's actually solid. He'll let the storm come not to sink you, but to strengthen you. Because you don't know what's inside of you until the wind starts blowing. And God changes everything. He doesn't consult your calendar. He doesn't ask for your permission. He steps in with purpose and says, this is the moment. This is the time. I'm turning it around right here. And it may catch you off guard, but it never catches him by surprise. He's not reacting. He's orchestrating. He's aligning what you can't see behind the scenes. Because while you're focused on what you lost, he's focused on what you're about to gain. Some of you are in the middle of the everything change right now. You're looking around wondering, how did I get here? The people you thought would always be there are gone. The dreams you were chasing feel distant. The certainty you used to lean on is slipping through your fingers. But hear me. You are not lost. You are not failing. You are not forgotten. You are being positioned. The chaos is not the end. It's the construction zone for your call. Don't curse the crisis. Don't resist the reroute. Don't let the fear fool you into thinking God has left. He's closer in the chaos than you've ever known him to be in your comfort. He's not tearing your life apart. He's tearing the lies apart. The lie that said your worth was in your title. The lie that said your identity was in your income. The lie that said your future was fixed to your past. He's breaking those off because he's about to build something that can stand. And when God builds, he builds better. He doesn't restore you to who you were before. He raises you into who you were always meant to be. That's why the change hurts. It's growing pains. That's why it feels like you're losing. He's making room. That's why it feels like a mystery. Because if you saw the whole picture, you'd try to control it. But God isn't interested in your control. He wants your trust. And trust doesn't always feel good. Trust says, even though I don't see it, I believe you're working. Trust says, even though I feel alone, I know you haven't left. Trust says, even when I'm afraid, I will take the next step. And that's where everything starts to shift. Not when the situation changes, but when your spirit does. When your heart says, I'm not going to let what I see talk me out of what I believe. There's some things you're praying for that haven't happened yet because God is preparing you for what you're not ready to carry. He's not punishing you. He's protecting you. You wanted the blessing, but he's building the foundation first. Because a skyscraper doesn't rise until the ground gets dug deep. So if it feels like your life is being uprooted, don't panic. Digging doesn't mean destruction, it means construction. You've cried over what left. You've questioned why it didn't work. But maybe it didn't fail. Maybe it finished. Maybe it was never meant to go with you into the next season. You've been mourning a chapter God already closed because you thought the story was over. But the author hasn't even turned the page yet. He's still writing. And what he writes is always better than what you thought you had planned. When God changes everything, he doesn't just change your situation. He changes you. He changes the way you see, the way you walk, the way you worship. The old you wouldn't have made it through this season. But look at you now. You're still standing, still showing up, still believing. That's not weakness. That's warfare. That's not survival. That's victory in disguise. You didn't see it coming. You didn't ask for it, but God chose you for it because he knew what he placed inside of you. He knew the strength. He knew the fire. He knew the faith that was buried beneath the surface. And this change, this divine disruption, was the only thing that could bring it out. So don't resent the process. Don't rush the transformation. You're not being punished. You're being refined. We crave clarity. We want timelines, signs, confirmations. But sometimes God gives us something greater than clarity. He gives us himself. And that's where trust deepens. When you realize that his presence is better than your plan, that he's faithful even when you're frustrated, that he's guiding even when you're guessing, that his hand is on you even when you can't trace his steps. There's a kind of trust that can only be developed in the dark, when the lights go out, when the door doesn't open, when the opportunity doesn't come. That's where your faith either folds or flourishes. And God will often allow the delay, the detour, the disappointment, not to discourage you, but to disciple you, to teach you that your hope can't be in outcomes. It has to be in him. Think about it. If you only trust God when things go your way, that's not trust. That's agreement. Real trust says, even when the answer is no, I still believe you're good. It says, even when I don't get what I prayed for, I know you're still working. It's the kind of faith that doesn't just praise him for what he does, it praises him for who he is. Uncertainty reveals what we truly believe. It strips away the fluff. It exposes whether our foundation is built on feelings or truth. Because when everything gets shaken, only what's rooted in truth remains. And that truth is this: God is not a feeling. He's not a mood. He's not a distant idea. He is a present help, a faithful father, a good shepherd who leads even when the path is unfamiliar. When you trust God in uncertainty, it creates room for intimacy. You stop treating him like a vending machine and start relating to him as your source. You begin to talk to him more, listen more, seek him not just for answers, but for peace. And that peace doesn't always change your circumstances, but it does change you. It gives you a calm in the middle of chaos. It anchors your soul when the storm is raging. Some of the strongest people of faith are not those who have seen the most miracles, but those who kept believing when there was no sign at all. People who stayed the course when everything around them screamed, quit. That's what trust looks like. It's not flashy. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's just quiet confidence a whisper in the heart that says, He's still with me. So, when the road feels unclear, when the answers don't come fast, when the waiting room feels like it's closing in, don't lose heart. This is where trust is growing. This is where your roots go deep. This is where your faith is refined, because God doesn't need you to understand everything. He just needs you to believe that He's still good in the middle of it all. And when you do, that's when your trust becomes unshakable. There are times when God will allow something to be removed from your life, not to hurt you, but to make space for something greater. We often see loss as the enemy of progress, but in God's hands, loss is often the tool He uses to lead us into transformation. The truth is, some things have to leave so growth can happen. Some doors have to close so better ones can open. Some relationships have to end so your identity can be rebuilt on something more solid than approval or attachment. We pray for more, but we rarely consider that more sometimes requires subtraction before multiplication. God doesn't just add blessings, He makes room for them. And part of that process means cutting away what can't support your next season. It's not always easy. In fact, it's usually painful. But it's also necessary. Because if you cling to what's no longer aligned with your purpose, you'll miss the breakthrough that comes with letting go. Loss will test your faith in ways comfort never could. It will force you to confront what you truly believe about God's character. Is He still good when the things you loved are no longer there? Is He still faithful when your prayers don't get answered the way you hoped? These are the questions that loss stirs up, not because God is cruel, but because He's developing something deeper in you than surface level faith. He's forming endurance. He's shaping maturity. He's growing trust that isn't tied to circumstances. There's freedom on the other side of loss, but you can't rush your way there. You have to feel it, grieve it, walk through it, but don't camp in the place of pain. Keep moving. God didn't bring you this far to leave you in a valley. He's using it all, the confusion, the heartbreak, the silence, for your good. He's not wasting a single tear. In fact, He's catching every one. And while you're mourning what left, He's already preparing what. Transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were meant to be all along. And sometimes it takes loss to unearth that person, to peel back the layers of fear, pride, and insecurity, to get you to the core of your calling, to bring you to the place where your faith is no longer propped up by what you can see, but rooted in who He is. So if you've lost something or someone, know this: God is still in control. The story isn't over. The loss may have felt like the end, but with God, every ending is the start of something new. He's not finished with you. He's forming you. And the transformation He's bringing out of this will be more beautiful than you can imagine. And God changes everything. He doesn't start with your situation. He starts with you. We often ask God to fix the things around us, the job, the finances, the relationship, the struggle. We think that if He would just change our environment, then our hearts would follow. But God doesn't work from the outside in. He works from the inside out, because true transformation begins in the unseen places, in your mind, your spirit, your identity. You might be waiting for your circumstances to shift, but God is waiting for your perspective to shift. He's more concerned with who you're becoming than what you're getting. So when everything around you changes, it's not always because God is trying to remove you from a situation. It might be because He's trying to reveal something within you. He's showing you who you really are when the pressure is on. Is developing strength, resilience, faith, and character. Qualities that don't always grow when life is easy. God will change your rhythm before He changes your results. He'll stir up your routine. He'll challenge your comfort. He'll put you in places that stretch you, not because He's angry, but because He's invested. He's not after your performance. He's after your heart. And sometimes the only way to change your heart is to change the scenery you've been hiding in. We all want change that's quick, clean, and clear, but real change, the kind that lasts, often feels messy and uncomfortable. It's not just about doing something new, it's about becoming someone new. And becoming is hard. It requires letting go of what was. It requires trusting God even when you can't see the full picture. It requires obedience when the outcome isn't guaranteed. God will change everything around you to get to the root of what's happening within you. He will expose the lies you believed about yourself, the patterns that kept you bound, the fear that drove your decisions. And in doing so, He will begin to rebuild you on truth. You'll start to see that you're not what you lost. You're not what they said. You're not the failure, the fear, or the flaw. You were chosen. You are being refined. You are in process. And God is not finished.